Welcome back, and with us live is Dr. Hassan Wageeh, Professor of International Relations. Dr. Wageeh, could you please shed more light on the long history of Egyptian-African ties?
Yeah, we are in Egypt, have three circles. Egypt is an African country in the north of Africa, so our real depth is African nations, all of them. So the circle of Africa is extremely important for Egypt. Also, Egyptians could claim that they are also Mediterranean. And Egypt is also an old Coptic, Pharaonic, and Islamic civilization. So Egypt's culture is multidimensional, and the most important is the African one because we are an African country in the African continent.
Right. How do you see the importance and timing of the visit?
Yes, I think that Egypt is in a critical situation, and the whole world is also in a critical situation where there is a war in Europe, and I think that the continent is extremely rich, and we have to, as Africans, we have to work on getting this wealth for the Africans and not to leave it for outsiders. If we are not working and if we are not taking actions as Africans to develop our countries, no one is going to help us, but they will use us. So any African would feel that kind of threat. So Africans are supposed to be open for cooperation with all parts of the world, but they have to work on themselves, for their real, authentic development. And Egypt is taking the task of being there to help African countries united for the sake of sustainable development, for mega projects, for using the wealth of the continent for the people of Africa first.
Right. Of course, there are challenges that would come in the way of every development, not only in the Arab world or in Africa, but worldwide. What are the challenges posed during the course of development in Africa?
Yes, of course, the issue of authentic and deep economic cooperation is a challenge. We have to deepen the economic cooperation, and because deepening the economic cooperation would help us get the continent much more integrated and to be self-sufficient. And of course, this is a very important challenge, the economic one. Also, developing human resources itself. You know, women empowerment is very important in the African continent. You know that women play an important role in all aspects of life, and if they are not empowered enough, the continent is suffering really. So this is one of the several challenges. The other challenge is that there are certain interventionist powers that would like to use African wealth. So cooperation with all power is very important, but there is a big difference between cooperation and using the continent for their own interest at the expense of the interest of the peoples of Africa themselves.
Right. The President's tour to the Southern African region is driven by Egypt's keenness to intensify engagement and coordination with the African countries. So if you'd like to elaborate over that.
Yes, as we have already mentioned, cooperation and the challenges are intertwined, and we have to address both of them. When it comes to the issue, for instance, of yes, we mentioned something about economy. Yes, we can mention something about politics of the continent itself. and it's also the politics of economics, the politics of development, the concept of politics of sustainable development. They are not separable. And also, there is a very important challenge when it comes to health, and Egypt is playing an important role, and even in the president's speech in Comesa yesterday and before that too, elaborated on how Egypt is playing a very vital and important role when it comes to fighting diseases, playing on the healthcare, an important role recognized by our African brothers and by the world, by world countries. Also, education. You cannot leave education. Education is a challenge, and you have to get the people of the continent educated enough to help serving the economic objectives.
Right. Tell us more about the role of the tour in cultivating the closer cooperation at the economic, trade, and investment levels.
Yes, of course. Since the Ukrainian-Russian crisis, which really unfortunate because it is getting in the wrong direction, not in the direction of being resolved. I think this will tell everyone to have this self-sufficiency as much as we can, despite the fact of the difficulty of that. But Africa is full of resources, and when it comes to using and utilizing all the potentials of the economies of the countries of Africa and solving one of the most important things Egypt is seeking, and the president's speeches really reflected that, is that to avoid conflicts, to avoid getting into deep conflicts among the countries of the continent. And I think the president is keen about this, and the Egypt leadership is keen about that, because there is no development when there are conflicts. Also, the speech is also asserted fighting terrorism and the roots of terrorism.
Right. The president also, during his African tour, led summit talks with a number of African leaders. So could you please shed light on the main topics that were tackled in those summits?
Actually, when it comes to this, you can see the warm welcome for the Egyptian president by his counterparts tells about how we need each other, and how Egypt's role is very important in the continent of Africa. And the talks between the presidents asserted all these, dealing with all these challenges. And we have mentioned the economic one, the fighting terrorism. We mentioned also the educational, the healthcare, several dimensions to enhance development with capital D.
Right. What about the role of the summit talks in developing the joint African action and in boosting the economic integration in the continent?
Yes, I think that, one of the efforts that's being exerted is to enhance the existence of a gathering like Comesa. Comesa has now 13 African countries, key countries, and I think that this gathering is extremely important to collect all the efforts to meet all the kind of challenges, meeting all the countries of Africa in serving the objective of development and progress.
Right. Also, during his visit to Zambia's capital, Lusaka, the president participated in the 22nd summit of the Common Market and Eastern and Southern Africa, COMESA. So we need to learn more about the agenda of that summit.
Yes, the agenda, as I have mentioned earlier, It is fighting terrorism. It is economic. It is integrating the cultural efforts. It is facing all the challenges and overcome these kind of challenges through deep coordination on all levels in African countries with each other.
Let us continue our thorough look over the President African tour that took him to several countries and hold summit meetings with the African leaders. And also during his summit meetings, he also discussed the latest developments in the regional issues and dossiers of mutual interest of cooperation. So how could that help in developing the frameworks of joint African action and push forward the development projects and boost economic integration in the continent?
Yes, the economic effort that needs to be exerted in all African countries is multi-dimensional. And when it comes to addressing these multi-dimensional problems, the most important thing is to be met on the highest level, like the meetings of the president. So the initiative of the president to visit 3 African countries is very welcomed to achieve this objective.
Right. Could you please shed light on the role of the tour in boosting the trade exchange, the African-Egyptian partnership? As we all know that Egypt is playing a leading role when it comes to assisting other brotherly African nations like the youth initiatives and training African youth in the National Training Academy and many other initiatives. Talk to us about that.
Yes, as we have mentioned, when it comes to the health initiative, it's very important and very critical for all African countries. And Egypt is taking the burden of carrying out and elaborating on a very important health agenda, because without health, so many other dimensions could be badly affected. And also there are initiatives in educational level, in fighting terrorism. We mentioned all of that.
Right. Could you please shed more light on the Egyptian COMESA growing trade and economic ties?
I have to, something went wrong, I'm sorry. Thank you so much. I'm sorry, I have to finish.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hassan Wageeh.
Thank you.
And we're going to go to a short